Welcome. Welcome, HOSA advisors from all over. My name is Linda Stanhope, and I am so excited to be with you this evening. I will be acting as the basic communicator here, but before we get started, I have a couple of messages that I need to pass along. First of all, the presentation itself is going to take probably between 30 and 45 minutes, and we will have a Q&A session afterwards in the chat room. I also want to make sure that you know that we will be archiving and placing this on the HOSA website for you guys to view later if you would like. And at the very end of the webinar, you will automatically have a survey that's going to pop up, and we would really appreciate your filling out the survey and resubmitting that. You won't have to do anything to get it. It will just automatically come up. So just real quick, a little bit about myself. Like I said, my name is Linda Stanhope, and I come from the great state of Texas. I am a HOSA advisor come full circle. Back in the 70s, I was a member of Texas HOSA before it was a national association. And I received the Texas State HOSA scholarship. Is actually how I went to college, and I became a medical technologist. So HOSA is very near and dear to me because I've seen it on every side, and I know the advantages that it holds for students. Besides that, after becoming a medical technologist and working in the medical field for 16 years, I then became a classroom health science teacher, which I have been in the classroom now for 22 years. I also have the privilege of working with new teachers in Texas, and was very excited when National HOSA asked me to spend the evening working with you. I do remember what it was like when you first come into the classroom from that world of medicine, and it can be a little daunting at times. So I'm hoping to share with you a few things that I have learned over the years. Also, just kind of letting you know, helping this evening on the technology side of the webinar is the Technology Director of National HOSA, Bobby Crandall. So with all of that, I'm going to get started, and hopefully this all goes well. All right, well, let's talk about HOSA and some of the tricks there. Okay, so what I basically have titled this session is a program of work, because we are going to want to be able to kind of advance our kids and get them going. What is HOSA about? Let's talk about it. The purpose of HOSA. The purpose of HOSA basically is to promote career opportunities in healthcare and to prepare the students successfully to pursue a health career. I have some pictures here of some of my students that you'll see throughout the PowerPoint. But HOSA really is a great opportunity for high school students. I didn't mention, but I would like to at this point, that I'm also the mother of 6. So being the mother of 6 and having looked at that college tuition several times, I am extremely pro career in technology. It is a wonderful opportunity for high school students to get in there at that level to kind of pick and choose areas that they're truly interested in and have the opportunity to work in it before they've spent the big money in a college area or had to wait for a really long period like we do frequently in the medical area because of long wait. Okay, all right. Let's talk about some guiding principles. I know as a new advisor, basically a lot of times you're wondering, what should I do and how does this all run? Well, basically what I want you to know is that you don't have to know everything to be a good HOSA advisor. If you keep in mind the principles of HOSA, you're going to do a great job. You're going to be wonderful at this. The next real guiding principle I'd like you to think about is that really HOSA is meant to be co-curricular, not just extracurricular. That way all of your students benefit and not just students interested in competition. With that being said, we're going to look at some of those areas of how you can make it more co-curricular in your classroom. HOSA's done a wonderful job of putting together information for you, and I use on a daily basis the skill sheets, etc. with my kids. Even if they're not competing in it, it's already set and done and made there for me and my students to use. The next piece of information that I'd like to give you is that basically you need to know that HOSA is a student-led organization and that the HOSA members should be doing the leading and you should be doing the advising. And that's really hard to do sometimes because coming from the medical field, many of you have a tendency to need to be in control at all times. And I find that this is the hardest thing for most new advisors. They want to sometimes step in, and the students learn a lot from small mistakes. Now, if they were going to make a huge mistake, you would definitely want to jump in there. However, there are going to be times that you really need to let the kids do it their way, make the mistake, and then have that opportunity, that teaching moment of saying, what can we do better and how can we make this better next time? I know it's really hard for medical people, but it's part of that leadership role that students need to have that opportunity to make those mistakes in this very safe environment. The next thing I want to talk real quick about is that the best HOSA activities support the purpose of HOSA. And if you'll remember, the purpose of HOSA was to help kids look at new careers. I also want you to know that no two HOSA chapters look alike. I work in a very specialized school. It's an academy school. So I have kids that are bused there from 6 different high schools in the morning and 6 different high schools in the afternoon. So I have afternoon chapters and I have morning chapters. Before I worked at this academy, I worked at a regular type of high school campus, and I stayed at that one campus, and kids only at that campus came to me during the day. So you're going to have different chapters from all over the United States. We've got chapters that are of 5 members in certain schools because they're such a small school. And we have chapters, I know, at least in the state of Texas, that range up into the 300s for a chapter. So you can have really large chapters or you can have small chapters. All right. So the next thing I want to do to remind you about is to let you know that you don't want to keep your HOSA chapter a secret. Your HOSA chapter is one of your best recruiting tools. I want to make sure that we're making announcements overhead that we're going to be doing this and this activity. We're having this social, or the HOSA students will be running the blood drive. You know, whatever we happen to be doing, I want to make sure that we're getting that word out. Kids hear that on announcements, etc., and they start listening and thinking about, wow, maybe that's an organization I would like to do. The other thing is even recruiting for your health science class. My HOSA students are generally my really big go-getters. Not every one of my students are in HOSA, but they all know about HOSA. Some of them are just too busy to really participate on a full-time basis. But my go-getters, they're the ones that are in everything that I do. Also, I want to make sure and re-emphasize that your chapter members should be doing the work. If you're working harder than your students on HOSA, then you need to reconsider, once again, that control factor and make sure that the kids start doing the work. Okay? When I start having kids actually get interested in HOSA, one of the first things that I want them to do is to actually explore the HOSA website. And so I'm going to spend a little bit of time with you exploring the HOSA website. Okay? So here's our HOSA website. And the more that you navigate through it, the better you will feel comfortable with helping your students navigate through it. For a few minutes here, let's spend some time actually going into the different little tabs. So we're going to go into the one called Advisor first. And many of you got on here in order to actually do your affiliation. But I don't know how many of you went actually to the Advisor resources. And there's quite a few of them. As we scroll here, second, I've got to kind of move a bar. You can see that you can get to the competitive events resources. Okay. But one of the areas that I wanted to show you real quickly is called the New Local Advisor Handbook, which the National HOSA put together several years ago. And it has lots of information in there for a new advisor. Everywhere from just some reminders on how to organize a new chapter to a program of work, which we will spend time on today, to having the students go through and do a scavenger hunt on the website to find certain things so that they get used to navigating the website. When my kids get ready for competition, one of the first things I have them do is to go and search different areas that they think they're interested in. If you've got HOSA officers, there's an entire section there talking about the different duties of the officers, not only the duties of the officers, but there's an installation that you can do that's kind of on the fun side. The other one that we're going to talk about is a lot of different activities that you can do with your group, such as team building and leadership. There are many effective team building exercises and icebreakers, which we will be looking at just a little bit today, as well as how to actually integrate HOSA into the classroom. So let's go into that for just a second. Okay, so that's on page 43 through 49. You can see that it's not just a one-pager list. So I'm going to scroll down there real quickly. Hope I'm not making you too dizzy. But for instance, suggested ways that we can use it are going to be right here. For instance, extemporaneous writing. One of the core values that my principal has been asking us to work on with our students is to help them reinforce those writing skills. And so extemporaneous writing as a bell ringer at the beginning of class is an excellent way to do that. And I just put a topic up there, and the kids are asked to write on it for a few minutes there. I use the extemporaneous guidelines occasionally to actually score those, okay? And my kids have seen that. Same way as speaking skills. It doesn't come natural for many people. Many people are very afraid of talking to others. So the extemporaneous speaking skills, or even prepared speaking, and having them have a guideline for what I'm going to be looking at is extremely helpful with the kids. We've given you some topics here that you can just use, that you can substitute a lot of topics here, okay? Medical spelling. You know, with spell check in the technology age, kids sometimes can really lose the value of being a strong speller, and we want to reinforce that with our kids. HOSA Bowl. HOSA Bowl, I use that as a review type activity with many of my different topics when we're fixing to take a test, and my students really enjoy it. Then, after I have reviewed it, I also usually see a pattern of what students are quick on the buzzer, and those are the students that I approach to see if they would be interested in forming a HOSA Bowl team. Biomedical debate. Kids need to be able to look at the ethics of what's going on in medicine and really being able to take a stand, but knowing what the other side is looking at. So biomedical debate is a wonderful way to do that. Maybe you have some of your artsy people. I give different poster type guidelines but then it helps me to see what students are really strong in that area. I'm not going to go through all the different activities, but I think you get the gist. This is a really good area to go to just even get lesson plan ideas. Okay? All right. So we're going to go back to our PowerPoint for just a minute, and we'll come right back. Okay. And, all right. So I have them explore that HOSA website, which we're going to keep exploring some more here in a minute. After the students have done that scavenger hunt and they've kind of explored the site, I try to schedule a meeting and start talking to the kids about a startup plan. Okay? At that first meeting or two, or even several meetings on down the line, sometimes you're needing to reinforce to students what is HOSA all about? What is the purpose of HOSA? If we, like tomorrow I have a meeting with my students, and we are getting ready for competition here in Texas. So I have copies of the information for when we'll be leaving on the bus, the cost that's going to be incurred, papers that parents need to sign as far as like permission slips. So I have copies of all that I'm going to be giving the students tomorrow during that meeting. I still try to do icebreakers and communication games with my students, even though we're here in the month of December. And the reason being, like I said, I have students from 6 different campuses coming. My kids don't necessarily know each other. They've not all grown up with each other. And so it's really important to sometimes build that communication and comfort zone with kids. There are a lot of icebreakers that are listed in that new advisor handbook, but I've also got some extras here that I want to look at with you real quickly. Is that coming up? There we go, icebreaker questions. And with an icebreaker, it can just simply be that easy. It can just be questions. The questions that you want to usually have on like an icebreaker are ones that are going to let them kind of dabble in their personality, that there's not necessarily always a right or wrong answer, but it perks up the interest, and other people are like, oh, you know what, I'm kind of like that, and so they kind of start bonding together. So we have listed in the HOSA Advisor Handbook quite a few of them, or you can even go out to the internet like I did for this particular one. If you were to answer, maybe I can get 2 or 3 of you to write in. If you were an animal, what would you be and why? And it'll be interesting to see on the chat bar what some of your answers are. Okay. All right. I'll let you know what those answers or responses were here in just a little bit. Okay. After we've done communication games and icebreakers, it's not just questions. We do several other different types. And so I'm going to kind of spend a little bit of time on that real quick here. And I apologize, I'm a little slow sometimes on where I need to go because I've got so many things opened up. Can you see me navigating? Let's go back in here to the handbook. Okay. And on the icebreakers, etc., and team type things that we do, we have several listed here for you. One of them that I've got listed there is 2 truths and a lie, which is a type of an icebreaker. A quiz could be that I have sometimes my kids just sit down and do different brain teasers and that type of stuff as a group. I'll have 3 or 4 of them. And we don't spend a lot of time on this, but just enough time that every type of meeting, the kids have an opportunity to do something a little on the fun side. So we've got several of them listed here, along with the answer sheet, so you guys don't have to sit there and look for it. Or we may do something such as like the human rope, or the human knot, shape it, form it. There are different activities that we've got listed, so where actually the kids are standing up and working together. Some of you are familiar with like a ropes course, and many of these activities are done from like a rope course type setting. But they're activities that you can easily do either indoors or activity. You don't really have to have a large space. So basically take a look at some of these things and get your kids kind of working together in a fun way. Okay. Here's one that I've got kids doing right now. They both have ropes around, but you can see they're having a good time. Okay. Afterwards, at this point then, I start asking kids to really think about different things that they want to do as a club or organization. Okay? And we begin to develop that program of work. I also, early on in the year, I start setting up elections with officers. Now that I'm an established club, we actually elect officers in the spring, and that's when we do our installation, is actually at our banquet at the end of the year. And then those officers get together and they work on my program of work over the summer. And they work on the t-shirt design, and we get a lot of that kind of stuff out of the way. I know as new advisors, all of you probably noticed, it was really hectic at the beginning of the year. And you were like, oh, just a few weeks in, I know it's going to settle down. And then what did you find out? It was like, no, not even did it settle down. And the bad news is the spring really doesn't get better. Summer for a lot of you will probably be a better time for your kids to get together because they have more time and they're not busy in so many different things. So kind of keep that in mind, that you may want to do that also. Okay. Here is a, sorry. We also have food many times at our meetings, just because students like food. Those are in our after-school meetings. Here's one that I've got as a teamwork type activities, and you can go onto the web, but we also have quite a few listed that we're happy to share with you. This is the spaghetti challenge, and basically the kids were given 20 pieces of spaghetti and 10 marshmallows, small ones, and they had to construct the tallest spaghetti tower that they could using just those 2 articles. So it's not something that cost a lot of money or took a lot of prep, but the kids had a good time with the challenge, and we've got instructions for you. Okay? So our program of work, basically, after we've done our get to know you, some of our team building, we start talking about what we really want to accomplish during the course of a year. Okay? There are some examples of the program of work in the HOSA Advisor book that we were talking about just a minute ago, if I can get to that page. Well, maybe. Did we lose it? Oh, there it is. Okay, and I need to back up just a little bit. Okay, here's an example. And basically what we do is an outline there of what we want to do every month. Okay? And I like to really try to do a state of balance. And this is where advising comes in. Because your kids will want to do 20 things every month. And there's not time for it. There's money for it. And then they start kind of becoming a separated group because you've got so many kids going in so many different directions that they lose that teamwork type of an attitude. So I would suggest that you kind of do a balance, okay? In September, if you're having a social, then in October, have a guest speaker. If you had a guest speaker and you worked on careers kind of in October, then you may want to do a social or something civic, which we're going to spend time talking about in November. Kind of do something different that appeals to different students every month. And most of your students will probably like all the activities, but kind of see if you can't get a blend and let them really get the full taste of what HOSA has to offer. Okay? Okay, so let's look at what that program of work might look like. Okay? All right. When you're looking at that program work, you want to kind of keep in mind the national goals of your particular state and district and national HOSA. For instance, when we think of doing something that we're going to raise money for, we often look at what the national project is of HOSA for the year. And if we happen to have a cystic fibrosis association, their chapter in our Amarillo area, then we would have possibly a guest speaker that would come and inform us about it and let us know how we could help their individual chapter. Sometimes, being a smaller city like Amarillo, we don't necessarily have all of the big groups. So we may end up just raising money for them and presenting that at the state level. Okay. Sorry, freezing up for a second. All right. Some of the things that we try to do occasionally, not every month, but we want to do something with like that's career or occupationally related. So at certain ones, I will have guest speakers, such as this is the fire department that's talking to my kids. And we were talking about fire safety. And then we also many times we'll use like a video because not always can I get a career person to come in. So sometimes you can find a lot of little YouTubes or you can find videos about a certain career and fix up a big bowl of popcorn and the kids, we kind of talk about it. If we can get them to do a demo, like for instance with the fire department, they were actually going over the safety of fire extinguishers. So we started controlled little fires in a parking lot outside of our school, and then had fire extinguishers where we would let the students practice on how to put out a fire. Kids really enjoyed it. The alumni, going back to this slide right here, these are professionals that can also be involved in your group. Many of my guest speakers are actually my ex-HOSA members. They had such a great time in HOSA and they believe in the cause of HOSA, and they're more than willing to come back and not only be an alumni member, but actually act as a guest speaker and try to encourage my students. They're also wonderful if I'm running competition to act as judges. So your alumni, you can really build up a great alumni base. Some of them also have my students like as mentors. They will take them for a mentorship in my school program. Community activities. There's all types of activities that your community could, your students could get involved in to help with. Everything from blood drives to health screening. Mine will even do it just for the teachers at the school, where they'll do blood pressure checks and BMI. Teachers don't like that one quite as well. We've helped out picking up litter and trash pickup days. Here's the picture of my students, and we had a citywide disaster drill, and my students were all the victims. So we've got them all moulaged up, and they had a great time acting as victims and putting on that Oscar award-winning type of show for the emergency workers. We also many times do things like, I have a CNA program at our campus, but we do an adopt a grandparent. We've had Christmas parties for homeless shelters. There's a lot of need in communities. We've given Thanksgiving baskets for needy families. We've even done like a Thanksgiving scavenger hunt where my kids went out and they got blankets and coats and all kinds of things in their neighborhood, and we made it kind of into a little competition, and then we took those up to the homeless shelter. So there's all kinds of fun things that you can do with your kids to get them involved. Mainly the thing about HOSA that kids love is the fact that they're surrounded by other kids that are really have common interests just like they do. And this builds a really strong bond between them. Okay? Leadership activities. Everything from holding office to having the biomedical debates and things that we talked about that you can do in class. But, you know, after I teach parliamentary procedure to my students in the classroom, I start talking with kids to see who might be interested in actually learning more about parliamentary procedure for like a team for as a HOSA event. This was my parliamentary procedure team that went to state last year. Social activities. Kids are social beings, and those that many times they need to work on those social skills, and they want to be with those kids that have that same like mind. A lot of my social activities are actually civic activities, like I said, working with the homeless or working with the grandparents at the nursing home. But we also do things such as picnics and ice cream socials. We've had dances, which we didn't necessarily do as a fundraiser, but we donated the money to the United Way or some kind of other cause that's in our city. Fundraising, let's talk about that. Not such a fun thing. First of all, with fundraising, I want to kind of caution you to check with administration on your guidelines for your school district concerning fundraisers. Many of your schools are limited to the type of fundraisers you can have or the time that you can have it. Many schools are like, you can have 2 fundraisers a year because we've got so many different clubs and organizations. Other campuses will be totally different on that, and if you're raising the money, you can raise as much and have as many fundraisers going as you want to. One of the things that I found that's really important is that the students understand what the money is going to be used for. My fundraisers will be much more successful if we set a goal and we tell them this is the amount of money we're hoping to raise today with this fundraiser. There's lots of, one of the things I would like to ask you guys on the chat room here in just a little bit is that if you would give us some ideas of different fundraising activities you do. This is actually a picture of my EMT class from last year, but they do a CPR heart saver course for people as a fundraiser for like the babysitters and that type of thing. This helps us, but they get skills on teaching and that patient interaction, as well as reviewing all the skills for CPR. Catalogs, that's one of the safer ways that you can look at raising money. Food sales, our school won't let us ever do any food sales, but I do know that that happens at a lot of different other campuses. Besides CPR classes, my students do car washes, and some we've done babysitting, parent nights. You just need to really figure out what works better for your area. If you can get up a booster club is actually ran by parents. That's wonderful. They can really be very, very helpful. Those parents can also be another great source for guest speakers. Going back to our HOSA website, on navigating through there, oh goodness. One of the things that HOSA's listed for you is that they have an entire fundraising handbook. And some of them are very, very unique ways of raising money. You can see by just the list. Whoops. Sorry. Okay. We're going to go back a page. There we go. All right, from the Flamingo Flocking Fundraiser, which I know is basically where you're going to place flamingos in somebody's yard, and they don't get to leave until they raise enough money, which then that person gets to pick where the flamingos go next, something of that sort. But there's page after page after page of some really unique ones that HOSA has gathered together that advisors have shared that have worked for them. So if you're looking for a new and inventive way to do a fundraiser, have your HOSA officers go to the HOSA website and look at that fundraising page there. Okay? All right. And then, of course, there's competition. When we look at competition, basically, my kids they're very competitive, a huge majority of them, and they really enjoy the competition and working on the skills and practicing after school. And many of them get very, very good at it. I've started kind of an internship program at my campus where as you get to be a more experienced advisor would probably work for you too. But my juniors this year will be responsible for teaching a sophomore next year. So that I kind of there's that teaching aspect that they will really be a much better, healthcare professional by practicing this patient teaching when they're using it on each other. As well as you can really see a lot of students kind of grow a bond and realize that they need to be mentoring students throughout their life. Okay, so the competition is a little more detailed and it would take a long time to get into that. Once again, that's also on your HOSA website for your kids to look at. As we close here real quickly with our presentation portion, I want to just make sure to go back over a few things. Your program of work doesn't need to be real elaborate. You want to really put certain activities that you know you want to accomplish. You can always add activities throughout the year if you see things are going really smoothly. But it's been my experience with students that if we just plan a few and really stick to those, they feel like they've had a really good year. Whereas if we have planned a lot of activities and we only got part of them done, they feel like, wow, we didn't get to do this and we didn't get to do that. And generally it happens just because everybody got so busy or other conflicts. So, it's usually not something that the students need to really feel bad about, but it works better if they just plan a few, accomplish those, and then they'll feel like they have had a good year. Try to keep a balance with those activities. Once again, you know, a few social activities, some civics, some career-related, and, of course, the competition. When you're looking at actually evaluating that program of work, do you think this is going to be one? Here's some guidelines that I use with that. Always keep the level of your members in mind. If you've got a freshman chapter, some of the activities that might require driving would not be a good activity for your chapter. You're going to need to get buses or that kind of thing, which can be a real challenge. So kind of keep the age group that you're looking at. I know we probably have some post-secondary advisors on the chat room tonight, and they're a total different group. So you want to keep in mind when you're doing that program of work, the level and the age group of your members, okay? Make sure that you've got a selection and that there's some challenges in there so that we see that growth in leadership and teamwork. If the chapter, like I said, if you're a young advisor or the chapter's a young advisor, don't take on too many activities, okay? And always look at what is that going to do financially. Are you going to be able to do this activity? Do you have funding, or are you going to need to raise money for the activity? Then finally, does the activity reinforce the goals of HOSA? And what efforts and commitments are going to be needed by your members in order to make it a successful activity? What specific student training? You know, like with the CPR, if I'm going to do a CPR class, I need to know that my kids can help with that because they're already certified. So you want to make sure that if you're doing a course like that, that your kids are already trained for it. Was the activity actually attempted by past groups before? And if so, what problems did they have that maybe you could already work out beforehand? And then if there's a risk involved for students, like if you decide to take them to a ropes course or something, you know, what are the risks and do the benefits outweigh the risk involved? Okay. Many times, in order to really, after we've done that program of work, we then separate out that program of work into committees to actually carry out the activity. That works better, and that gets more kids involved rather than just your officers. That lets other kids start building up that leadership role that they need. And most of all, what I really want to encourage you to do with your HOSA group is to have fun. Have fun, enjoy your kids, get to know your kids, and allow them to have fun and occasionally even fail with an activity if they need to, in order to learn from it in this very safe environment. Once again, be patient with yourself. There's a lot to learn. Don't get discouraged. And ask from other seasoned advisors for advice. Hopefully you've already found somebody close to your area that is willing to mentor you or to just help give input on what you should expect and what has worked for them or what has not worked for them. At this time, I want to open up the chat room now for the question and answer session. Barely hearing you, Bobby.
Linda, can you hear me? I'm trying to type in these questions, but for some reason it's not going to. I will just read off the questions if you would like to answer them. Okay. The first question is from Pam, and she says that she has registered her students for state, but she doesn't know about registering for nationals.
Okay. So, Pam, when you went onto the national website, let's just go back there real quick to that, and we'll go into here. Let's see if it'll take us to, when you go in and you're going to do registration there, as a local advisor, okay, it would have taken you to the online affiliation, and it would have automatically registered if you were in this area here. State and national gets registered there together. Okay, so if this is the area that you were in, you were actually at the HOSA website, you would have been registering at both. If you will look at the bottom of your affiliation document where it actually said how much money you needed to pay to the state, you should have it broken out as so much money going to the state and so much money going to the national organization. If that didn't happen, I would contact Bobby at National to see what you needed to do. But the state affiliation, at least with the state of Texas, is automatic with the national.
Okay, perfect, Linda. The next question a few other people have asked about incorporating HOSA into class time.
Okay. Like I said, HOSA is intended to actually be co-curricular rather than extracurricular, and that really just depends. I don't have HOSA meetings during my class time, but I do use a lot of the, like I said, the skills, etc. during my class time. I use the skill sheets. I use a lot of the competition guidelines as lesson plans for different things that I'm doing with the students. However, the way that my campus is set up, we have meetings before, after school with all the busing of the students coming in. So I do know of campuses that every Friday they spend 15 minutes of class time having a HOSA meeting, but at my campus we do not do that. I think it's flexible. HOSA, National HOSA doesn't have a standard or a guideline that you have to use. It would really be more up to your district or school setting that says which way you can go with that.
Okay, perfect. The next question is, how do you handle the lack of motivation by some of your students?
Ooh, well, that's a good question. Hopefully those students were involved in the planning process of what they wanted to do. I mean, if I have students that are scared to death to give blood, they're probably not going to be too excited about the blood drive. But certain kids, they get in over their head, and they're like, oh, yes, I want to join this, I want to join this. And then when they see that they're still busy doing other things, sometimes they lose the motivation. Or some kids actually just lose motivation, period, in life. It happens to be a team thing. I try to find out, well, what were you wanting to do? How can you help? I actually generally have officers, some of my leader kids, see if they can't help kind of mentor that student back into getting involved in the group.
Veronica would like to know if you have ever had to remove a student from a leadership role.
Yes, I have, but only once. So it was an ordeal where the student made some bad decisions, and she was actually removed from our program. When they removed her from our program, it was an automatic that she would no longer be a HOSA officer. I'm not sure what her situation is, but we have had leaders that, they run because actually they get elected maybe by a popularity type of setting. In fact, at our campus, that's happened several times, and so we have a new guideline. The students all get a vote on who they're going to elect as officers for next year, but the teacher gets a double vote. So if I know that that student's just doing it for the popularity or what they show me in class says I'm not going to be a good officer, they may still become an officer, but they may not get the role that they thought they originally were going to get. Instead, I may put them in charge of, you know, something like the refreshment committee or whatever, that if it happens, great, and they can prove themselves there for the next year. But there are times that we've actually had to remove students from, or they stay by title as the vice president, but then we end up asking other kids that are committee leaders or whatever to step up the work that they're doing, and actually they end up doing the job for whatever that officer was.
Okay, Dawn is asking the minimum requirement of a HOSA chapter, minimum member requirement for a HOSA chapter.
Okay. The guidelines say as far as how many members you have that you need in order to have a HOSA chapter. I'm looking it up just to double check myself on that. But I believe you have to have, for it to become you must have 5 local chapters to become a state affiliate. And you have to have at least 5 members in your chapter to become a local chapter.
Perfect. Okay. Could you explain the process of going to state and then being selected to go to nationals? We've had a few people ask about that, going to state and then going to nationals competitions.
Okay. In the state competitions, the students will compete against other campuses, and at that point they will, in certain states, will have both post-secondary and secondary students competing. But the post-secondary students, or the college kids, only compete against other college kids. And the secondary or high school kids only compete against other high school kids. There isn't like an age limit. In other words, you may have a freshman competing against a senior in the very same competition at that state level. In Texas, we actually have a regional level beforehand in order to get to the state level, where at that point we're going to take the top 3 winners to go to the state level, but we have 7 areas. So then we have 21 students competing at the state area, state competition. If you don't have regional competition, then what happens is you're going to have all the students coming there to the state competition, and you could have quite a large number. Some will be given written exams, and some will be given in order to kind of narrow down the number that would be going on to the skill competition portion. In other states, they may do an online testing in order to kind of narrow that down before actually getting to the state competition. Once we get to the state competition, we're going to have that competition, and the top 3 students in each area or each contest will then advance to the national area. However, that is separated out, like I said, between secondary and post-secondary. So say you have both competing at your state competition, 3 high school teams of CPR would move on to national, and 3 post-secondary teams would move on to national. So if you've got both running, you may actually have what looks like 6 winners up on stage.
Okay, perfect. I've got kind of a 2-parter. Mary Ellen is asking, she has students who are afraid to compete, and she is wanting to know how to get them to try something new if they are afraid. And also, Maria is saying that her students always wait for her to tell them what to do. How does she get her students to take the initiative role and take a leadership role?
Okay. You know, we have a lot of great kids out there, but they are really shy. And so they the thought of going in front of a judge is really nerve-wracking. What I generally try to do with my students that are really nervous about doing something like that is I ask them to get onto a team event. Because generally if they're with a team, they're less anxious in being in front of judges. The other thing that I try to do with my students, trying to get them ready for competition, is we do mock competitions at my campus. In other words, I will have the English teacher read the essay for extemporaneous writing, and I just make up a topic. And all of my kids have a chance to go in there, and then they judge them using the guidelines. Same way with CPR. I have some of my paramedic buddies come in, and they will judge the team like they're at the campus to just kind of give the kids a little bit of a feel of what it's going to be like when they actually get to competition. For kids that are really nervous, many times an online test is something that they feel comfortable with. They're not actually in front of a judge. They're taking a written exam just like they would every day in your class. For others, maybe they're very creative and they have the ability to draw. So, you know, they're not actually having to talk to a judge. However, they get the opportunity to show up some of their talents and compete still. Generally, after going to competition the first year, the kids are much more relaxed about it. And so I also ask for my more experienced students to really visit with my kids about that. And that's where I was telling you earlier, I've set up that the juniors this year, I can't make it my seniors because my seniors are going to graduate and they won't be back next year. So my juniors this year that are in competition have to adopt a sophomore next year so that I can keep building that team and they can keep mentoring them and encouraging them to do some kind of competition. And a lot of times kids will join in simply because they've got that. As far as what do you do for kids that just sit around waiting for you to instruct them, I would send them to the HOSA website to do one of those scavenger hunts and ask them to pick their 3 top things they would like to do as an event. And then we'll narrow it down. But you've got to get the kids to buy in enough that they want to do something. And so I make them actually go out to the website and do kind of, like I said, the scavenger hunt. Give me some kind of indication of what they think they would like to do. And then I read through the guidelines with them, and we talk about what that event would look like. It's taken many years for me to understand all the different competitions. And every year they come out with new competitions. And I'm reading those guidelines right along with the students, trying to help them understand what we think the competition is going to look like. But I've also really tried to reinforce with my kids, it's a learning process, and learning is never wasted. Learning is never wasted. There's something in this competition that you're going to get out of it, even if you don't walk away with a medal. You're going to make new friends. You're going to feel a new sense of confidence. You're possibly going to visit a new place you've never been before. And so try to use some of those type of tactics to get the kids encouraged about going and trying competition.
Okay, can you show how to get your state advisor contact information? We're getting a couple questions that probably are best directed to state advisors, like how many members per a chapter can fill out the state officer application. That is going to be a question for your state advisor. So if you click on the advisor portion there, like Linda has done, and then click on stated, oh, I'm sorry, it's about HOSA, and then if you go over to about HOSA, okay, and then state associations. So if you have a state-specific question like applying applications for state office or state competitions, you're going to want to find your state advisor here. We've got all the contact information for the different state advisors there. The next question, do students, it's another two-parter, do students have to compete, and what are the benefits besides competing? What are the benefits in joining HOSA besides competition?
Okay. Well, basically, I think the big advantage of joining HOSA, if you're not going to do the competition, is that you still have an opportunity to hear the guest speakers. You still have an opportunity to go to the social events and network with other students that have the same passions that you do, looking at going into the medical field. An opportunity sometimes to network with those mentors out there because they're willing to work with students, even if they're not going to go into a type of competition. I think every time you do something good for somebody else, you walk away feeling a little bit better about yourself. So that opportunity to work with your HOSA chapter on those civic events is a benefit to the students. Not all students do like the competition, and not all students have time for the competition. But that's also another plus and something that a lot of kids do enjoy working with.
Okay. The next question is, if there are more than one advisor, do you split up the students to do different activities with different advisors, or keep them all together?
That would just be a campus decision, but the way that we do it at my campus, because we do have multiple advisors, I'm the advisor that handles pretty much the competition type stuff. So we just finished, I organized all of the students taking their online tests, and I'm in the middle of getting them all registered for their competitive events. Other advisors will also be going to the competition and helping with competition, but I'm going to be actually responsible for making sure everybody's registered, etc. But I have another advisor. She handles all the fundraisers, which is one of my least favorite things to do. Another advisor helps with getting kids ready for the skills after school and before school. She has a very flexible schedule, so she stays there with the kids a little bit later in the afternoon and meets kids in the morning to help work on skills, getting them ready for competition. So if you've got multiple advisors, that's awesome. It's wonderful to be able to spread out some of those tasks to different people. We have another advisor. She thoroughly enjoys doing all the social activities. While I go to all the social activities and I make sure my students have the information about the social activities, I didn't have to do all the planning for the activity. She sits down and she works with the officers or the committee and makes sure that we've got everything for that social. So if you've got more advisors, that's the way we split it up at our campus.
Okay, Mary Ellen is asking if you internally have competitions. So she had 8 teams that wanted to do CPR, but they could only take 3. Would you do an internal competition to narrow that down and then take them to the local or state competition after that?
Yes, that is what we do. Sometimes you will get so many kids in one particular event, and so I'll hold a local one, whether it's a written exam and the top written exams, go, or it may be that we're actually going to do a skill. If you've got 18 kids in a particular area, one of the things that in Texas, once I have 40 kids, I can split into 2 different chapters. I don't know if your state allows that, but Texas, once your chapter gets 40 or better, then you can actually split into 2 different chapters. And so then I could actually take more kids in a particular competitive event. So you
okay,
might
I'm sorry, I thought you were
That's okay.
finished. The next question is from Tina. She is asking, how do you determine who travels to state with you? Is there a GPA requirement or a conduct requirement?
Yes and yes. We use UIL rules for any student that's going to be going. I don't feel like students that are failing English and math or some other class need to be leaving campus to go to competition if they're not passing their other courses. And that my district has always supported that. They're very supportive of the fact they don't want students leaving if they're not passing their classes. So we kind of came to that on that agreement. Also on behaviors, one of the things that I do when I'm going to competition is I always take one of my administrators with me. They can handle those discipline problems, even though I pretty much make sure that we're not going to have any discipline problems. If something does arise, I've got an administrator there with me. In the state of Texas, we're busy as advisors running the competition, so I always take several extra chaperones and an administrator with me to make sure and handle anything that might be a problem. If I have a student that I already know has some issues, I have actually called for parent meetings along with that administrator before we ever leave to see if we think this is going to be a problem. And most of the time, if we go to that link, the student really understands that this is my expectation, and we're going to abide by the rules, or we won't be going to the competition. Another thing that I do actually with my competition, trying to get the students ready, is I actually do a dress rehearsal. I make the students wear what they're going to wear to the opening ceremony and the closing ceremony and what they would wear for their contest. And we have different days for that so that I can make sure that they're dressed appropriately. So, you know, I don't have to address those kind of problems when we get on the bus either.
Okay, we've had a few different people ask about deciding which competitive event to pick. Could you show the guidelines and maybe talk about helping students decide what to compete in?
For membership too, that mine's kind of covered up with other stuff right now. So you're going to go, there is actually a brand new thing that HOSA just came out with called Selecting the Right Competitive Event. And basically it's just kind of a, what would you call that, Bobby? It's a schematic kind of helping the kids figure out different things just in a nutshell real quick to look at. If you like to do teamwork, then, you know, these are the type of events that you don't like to work with a team and you want to work solo. These would be the type of events that you want to go into. As far as actually going into the competitive events that I was talking about, and you want to go into the, pull up the, yeah, please. Okay. Sorry.
That is the competitive event updates. So that's a PDF document that, or a Word document that's opening.
Oh, okay. I apologize. I'm on the wrong page. That's totally me. Sorry, Donnie. If we can get right back. Okay.
The very top link is the one that goes directly to the guidelines. Yeah, that one.
Like, oh my goodness, this is awful. Okay.
Pam, the schematic.
Go into. I'm sorry. What were you going to say, Bobby?
I was just going to say we've had a couple of people ask where that infographic was of selecting the competitive event, and that is under the advisor resources. So if you go to advisors and then local advisor, you can find the PDF document that helps you select your competitive event.
Okay. And I am still in advisor resources. These are also under member resources or student resources, and go right into the what is called competitive events. And then say I have a student that's interested in dental terminology. They simply click onto that area, and then I have my kids read about it. But basically, it's the guidelines for it. It tells them the type of dress, the rules and procedure in the case of dental terminology. It will let you know that it's a test, and these are the topics that you're going to be needing to study. It uses the actual references that they're going to take the test questions from. You may have some of these references, you may not. There are times that I have my kids go to the library because I don't have certain books. You kind of build up your library of references as you go. Okay? It tells you that it's a series of questions, and then there's a series of 20 tiebreaker questions that they're going to be using in case of a tie. Okay? It gives you the fact that it's a 90-minute maximum time limit. Kind of giving the kids an idea. Okay? And then the rest of it is pretty much for kind of advisors. It's talking about if you were running the competition, these are the supplies that you would need to have. However, there's also equipment that may need to be brought by your students. So you would want to take a look at that with your student to make sure there weren't any spark bugs. With this written exam, they need a number 2 pencil with eraser. Okay? They are also going to need a copy of their electronic, either print or electronic exam guidelines, which is what we're looking at right now. We want to make sure that the kids have actually read the guidelines. If they're competing at that area, state, and national level, we want to make sure that they feel comfortable with knowing what they're actually going to be doing at that competition. So just making them print it off kind of helps them read it. Okay?
Okay. You answered some of Teresa's questions. She was asking, for the students who want to compete, how do you pace them? When do they need to choose their competitive event? How do you check their progress to see if preparation is mostly, or she's asking, is preparation mostly outside of class?
For the preparation outside of class?
Yes, and then how do you pace the students? When do they need to choose their competitive event? And how do you check their progress?
Okay. That really varies from state to state, and what I mean by that is, like, for instance, in the state of Texas, we had online testing last week, which means I had to have my kids I made my kids pick the competition they were looking at going into way back in October. The deadline for picking their event was October 31st. That is just a random date. And then at that point, they had to come and they had to be with one advisor, at least checking out materials. We actually made little folders for each of the students. And they brought me a copy of their guidelines, so I absolutely knew I was signing them up for the right online test. We looked at what study material we might have for them so that they could work on it. And I use test banks from all kinds of things, like I teach a medical term class, and there's test banks out there. There's different ones like that that I will just kind of make a random test of, just to make sure that they're actually practicing. If it's the students having to do like poster competition or PSA, they always think they're going to have more time than what they really do. And there's rules that say you've got to show this to so many people. You've got to get out and, you've got to put together that notebook. So before the actual date of competition, I always do, everything has to be finalized 2 weeks before we actually leave on the bus. So it's going to kind of vary depending on your state and the size of your campus, but my online and that original picking out what you think you're going to do is actually back in October. For some of you, you're in small states, you're only going to have a state competition, you're not having to go through different regional ones. Once again, I would set that in January. You know, give them the Christmas break to go over and look at the HOSA website. But in January, they need to let you know what they want to do so that you can start helping them and kind of keeping a record that kids are working on it and they're not getting on that bus unprepared.
Okay, Kristen is asking, do fundraisers pay for travel for students to attend state and national competition? If not, where does the money come from?
Check with your career and technology director. There's often funds that should be set aside for student organizations, and they're paid for through the Carl Perkins Fund, and they may have a set-aside amount that they give each club and organization that they're willing to help out with. For instance, when we will be traveling to El Paso, and my career and technology director is paying for the bus to area. We fundraise for the hotel bills, and the kids are paying their own registration fee and their food costs. So sometimes we split it out, and part of it's the kids, part of it's my district, and part of it is actually fundraising. But check with your career and technology director. They should be able to tell you if there is funding available, how much that funding is.
Okay. The next question is, do you have a parent meeting at the beginning of the school year?
That's a wonderful idea. Sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. I have had a parent meeting trying to get a booster club together and making sure that parents understand what our organization is about and that the kids are joining, and, you know, I have certain expectations from them. However, I always have kids that parents can end up coming. Our campus now, we have iPads, and so my students I can do what we call a bursary, or basically I have this last year, what I did was actually a meeting where I pre-recorded my expectations, and then the kids had to bring back a signed piece of paper from their parents saying that they did it or they watched the video. So there are different ways that you can do it, but the more parent communication you have, the better off your year will start off.
Okay, and Linda, just to let you know, there's just about 6 minutes left, and it might cut us off, so I might rudely interrupt you once the countdown is getting lower, but I just want to get out these last couple questions. And if you have a question, be sure to type it in, and we will try to address it. If we didn't have time to address your question, you can always send us an email at info@hosa.org. But let's see, Jana is asking, what is the average number of students most chapters take to the state competition?
To the state competition? That would be very difficult to tell you, because in Texas, like I said, it is based off of the number of winners you had at the regional area. For instance, one year I took 28 kids to the regional competition, and I took 21 to state. But then the next year I took about 30 kids, and I only had 14 advance to state. So that can really vary. If your state is a smaller state and you only have a state competition, you could physically have one student in every single event. You need to make sure that you bring enough help there for you to, like I said, kind of guide and watch over the kids while you're working. And my advice to new advisors is that first year, if this is your very first year and you didn't already have an established group, that you are taking over, you may only want to take like 10 kids with you and pick certain ones to kind of go and make sure they're juniors or sophomores that'll be returning, but, you know, kind of just a small group that you could work with and feel comfortable. Make sure they understand this is just, we're trying this out this year. You're new at it, the kids are new at it, and you're kind of the test field for us.
Okay, the next question is, do most HOSA programs have students throughout high school? My students are only juniors and seniors.
In Texas, the health science program is intended to be a 4-year type of program, but I do know many campuses are only the 2-year. They're just junior and senior type courses that they're offering. So that's not uncommon at all. That maturity, even if your students had not competed at that freshman and sophomore level, the maturity that they gained by just becoming juniors and seniors and the life skills that they've already obtained at that point, they will still be very competitive at the competition.
Hill is asking, and there was a problem earlier. Linda Stanhope is actually the one speaking. My name is Bobby, and I'm just doing technology things, but it's saying that Bobby is speaking, but that is Linda. Hill is asking, Linda said earlier that if the advisor is working harder than the students, then something was wrong. What does she mean by that?
Well, HOSA is really meant to be a student-led organization, and by being a student-led organization, the kids should be doing the planning, the kids should be doing the organizing, the kids should be doing the practice. There's still a whole lot of work that the advisor is doing. Like I said, you know, I'm having to do all the paperwork. I have to order the bus. The school won't let a student order the bus. I'm making the hotel reservations. But the students, they need to be practicing those skills and getting on the website and looking for events that would work for them. I shouldn't be the one that's having to search for an event that works for them. This is where the kids should be doing the work. If we actually have a social, that the kids are doing the setup and the cleanup, and the committee has figured out what we're going to need. This should not be something that I have to do alone. The kids should be doing that, and I'm there advising them, saying, that sounds like a great idea, or, whoa, that sounds like a great idea, but it's going to cost too much money and we don't have it in our budget, you know. So I'm doing the advising, but kids should be doing the majority of the work so they get an opportunity in this safe area to really learn what it's like to throw an event, to have a social activity, to do something for a civic group, what it's like to raise the money, and to know they need to be doing the fundraising. I'm not the one that's going to set up the fundraising booth every day.
Okay, Christine is asking, is there a place, actually, you know what, we've only got a minute left, so we might just want to close. Again, if you have any questions, you can always email us at info@hosa.org. We will make this presentation, we'll upload it to YouTube and post it to the website, and we will make sure to email everyone the link and also email a copy of the presentation. So we've just got about 40 seconds left, Linda. Christine is asking, is there a place where we could sample tests for events in case we need to have an in-school competition?
That's where I just go to my test banks. Like for the CPR or whatever, I use old copies of CPR tests that I've used in the past. HOSA does not have any, that I know of anyway, they do not have any old test banks that you can use. So I just use test banks that are out there and available from different books to make up those tests.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.